Okay, so this is a simple video to show how easy it can be just to install Python packages. There's a lot of stick online about how complicated installing things in Python is. I just want to show how simple it can be. Um, and yeah, let's get to it. What we've got here is just Python and typical normal Python. We've got Python 3.12, which is quite new at the time of recording. And what we're going to do is demonstrate some good practices. We're not going to use any big community projects like Poetry or Rust. They're actually not needed. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. Just doing like standard web dev stuff or infrastructure automation. You actually don't need a lot of those projects to just keep a simple, maintained Python project. Keep it simple. Let's go. So we're going to create a virtual environment. Let's first create a folder for our project. So I'll put this folder inside a project called my Ansible project. So because this is a new project and it's going to have a Ansible dependency, sorry, not an Ansible, a Python module that it needs, a Python package, I'm going to create a Python virtual environment, and I'm typing Python -m venv, and that's telling Python, hey, I want to use the virtual environment module, and we're going to give it an argument called venv, and that's going to be the folder in which we store the virtual environment. This is built into Python. You don't need to install anything extra. That might not be true actually. So if you are running this for the first time and you're on Ubuntu, you might get a message that says, "Hey, can you please do an apt-get install Python -venv tools?" Simply follow the instruction. You'll be fine. Okay. So now I'm going to activate that virtual environment. What I've got at the beginning there is a dot. That's a command called source, which is available in the bash shell. I'm currently using the bash shell. If you echo shell, you can do that on your any Linux terminal, and it tells you what your shell is. Popular ones include fish, bash, z shell, z shell, etc. So an alternative to the dot, you can just use source and say venv bin activate. And what that's telling the shell to do is read that activate file, and it does all the things necessary to activate the virtual environment. To deactivate, you type the word deactivate and press enter. You can tell the difference by saying which Python. So currently I'm outside, or I'm not within the virtual environment, and you can see that Python is being referenced to user bin Python. But if I activate my virtual environment and now I do which Python again, you can see that actually now it's referencing a Python within that virtual environment folder. Nice, contained. And within virtual environments by default comes pip. Again, all these things are included by default. And what I'm going to install is Ansible. You can install other packages too, like Flask, for example. Let's start with Ansible. I'm going to just watch the CPU whilst that's happening. So it might get a little bit CPU intense whilst that's going on because I've got the video running at the same time. So by default, pip is going to reach out to pypy.org, which is a registry where all the Python packages are hosted. You can reference other registries if you want to. Perhaps you're in an environment where you have to reference different, like a Nexus, for example, or a Sonar Cube, or a Quay key registry. But by default, most people will be, if they're doing like web dev stuff, will be referencing pypy.org to download the packages. Great, so that's now installed. You can do a pip list, and it will show all the packages that are installed. Now, we only asked for Python. The reason we've got all these other ones, sorry, we only asked for Ansible. The reason we've got all these other ones is, of course, Python, the Ansible package depends on other packages. And the, I forget what it's called, but the process has worked out what are the packages based on Ansible, Ansible's distribution of the package. It says, hey, I'm also dependent on these other packages, and it's gone off and got those for us as well. You can also do a pip freeze, and that'll give you a list of the current versions of each package. You might want to write that into a file. This is a very common pattern that you see online. And now when you create that in a Git repo, you can ensure that you install the same versions of those packages, which may or may not be what you want. There's pros and cons to that too. So for example, if we create a Git repo for this quickly, and just add that file to our Git repo and create a .git ignore. This is going slightly off topic, but if you want to do a bit of Git as well. So now we've got a project with a Git. If I just rename that file, I think I named my .git ignore file with a hash on the end. Didn't want to do that. There we go. Going too quick. Cool. Now if I add that .git ignore file, we're only going to have in our project, excuse me, that requirements file. So if we were to create a README for this, we could, let's do that as well. So getting started. So perhaps you've got a colleague that needs to follow this, or a more junior dev. We can show again, create the virtual environment, module virtual env, folder venv. By the way, there is a convention in the community to sometimes create a folder with .venv. Personally, I don't like that because folders are hidden by default and that can be confusing. So step one, create the virtual environment, and then you go install required packages. Requirements. So install requirements. Don't forget to activate the environment. And again, just a usability thing, the dot is actually really easy to miss. And not everybody will be copying and pasting these commands and they might not know what the dot does. An alternative is to use the word source, which does the same thing. And then we'll do the pip install -r requirements.txt, and you're done. And we can just verify that we've got that package installed. We have Ansible. Ansible tends to come with a lot of, or does come with a lot of different CLI programs. So you've got Ansible Playbook, Ansible Vault, etc., etc. And the process is the same. Just pip install. Let's add Flask, for example, which is a popular web application framework. So now we do pip list. And of course, we've got Flask in that list there. And then if we were to do something like that, we would do our freeze again to update our requirements, and we'd have a diff. You can see now the benefits coming out of using Git, because now we've got those differences because we've added Git to, we've added Flask as a requirement. It would be quite rare, to be honest, to have a Python project which combined both Ansible and Flask, because Ansible is more for infrastructure, and sometimes you might want to have different repos for infrastructure and others for applications, but I'm hesitant to get into a debate about mono repos versus different repos. That is definitely for another video, if it's worth talking about at all. So yeah, pip install, doing virtual environments, really simple. Yeah, use what's available. Just built into Python by default. Python. Let's go.